Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The US says it has carried out a drone strike in Afghanistan, killing an ISIS attack planner. US Central Command said no civilian was killed in the attack in Nangarhar province. It comes a day after ISIS claimed responsibility for the Kabul airport attack that killed at least 170 people, including 13 US troops. A top Iranian security official has accused US President Joe Biden of illegally threatening Tehran. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, said Biden's statement establishes Iran's right to reciprocate. Earlier in a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, Biden said the US may consider other options if nuclear diplomacy with Tehran fails. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi says his country won't be used for launching attacks on neighboring countries. At a summit in Baghdad, Iran has emphasized the need for achieving peace through a dialogue free from foreign interference. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron said the Arab region continues to stand with Iraq in its fight against terrorism. US President Joe Biden says China is withholding critical information on the origins of COVID-19. Biden's statement comes after US intelligence community said coronavirus was not developed as bioweapon. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 120 people have lost their lives to the virus, while nearly 4,200 tested positive overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.48 million lives and infected 215 million people so far. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the news in detail. The US says it has carried out a drone strike in Afghanistan, killing an ISIS attack planner. This comes as a death toll from the ISIS Khorasan's twin blasts at Kabul airport reached 170, including 13 US troops. This report has the details.
As the US forces experienced the deadliest day in Afghanistan since 2011, President Joe Biden pledged the US will hunt down the perpetrators and make them pay. The airstrike the US conducted overnight in Nangarhar province, Central Command said no civilian was killed in that. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby says the US believes there are still specific, credible threats against the airport. Kirby said the airport remains under the US Army, denying Taliban claims that they had taken over parts of the site. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the US aims to prevent its aid to Afghans passing through Taliban coffers. He noted that the Taliban have made clear it wants US diplomatic presence to remain in Afghanistan. But Price said the US will make decision in light of protection and security of American officials. Meanwhile, the Western official said a swift passage will be provided to every foreigner to leave Afghanistan in the next 48 hours. Earlier, the US Embassy in Kabul warned Americans to avoid traveling to the airport due to security threats.
Now we're joined by Zunaira Azhar, a political analyst. She is joining us from Lahore. Zunaira, thank you for your time. Ms. Zunaira, since taking power in Afghanistan, a number of Taliban figures have entered Kabul from years of exile. But the group's supreme leader, Haibatullah Akhundzada, is out of the scene. What could be the reason?
Well, I think it's very obvious. For decades, ever since 9/11, ever since the war on terror has begun, they have been operating in a very shadowy way. That was, of course, the reason to protect their leadership, for their whereabouts, who is who and doing what in the cadre of the political arena or the military arena. They were hiding it from the world for the intelligence purposes. Now, when they're out, of course, they are seen in a more organized manner. You will see a hierarchy. You will see their PR section more developed. You would see their political and military maneuvers separated. And And if you look at Akhundzada, Hebatullah Akhundzada, the one you are talking about, he is the supreme leader, but he is considered more of a religious figure because he heads the Council of the Religious Affairs as well. On the contrary, you would see that all the basic arenas have been divided into the people. Like you would know Muhammad Yaqub, who is the son of Mullah Umar. Everybody was expecting that because of his lineage, he would get a very supreme position within the supreme leadership, but he is nowhere. He's just looking after the military leadership and assisting them. Similarly, you would see Mullah Baradar, who is the deputy leader, and he is the one who has been going and signing the agreements with the Trump administration. So I think it is because now they have divided their roles, because they know they have to operate in a more organized way. They have to formulate a government. They have to represent themselves in front of the world. So that is the only reason that comes to my mind. And Hebatullah Akhundzada has always been like that. He has never been in the limelight, but he's of course the supreme leader, so he is calling the shots.
Right, Zunaira, although the Western forces have paced up the evacuation process, yet there is still a lot of uncertainty on whether it could be completed by 31st of August. How do you think will the Taliban respond if the deadline is not met?
Well, that's a very critical situation for US. Yesterday, when Mr. Biden was talking to the world, to the Americans mainly, and he repeated the historically very famous sentence that we will get back and we will not forget. Now, today, all of the newspapers and journals are full of the criticism that that sentence has an influence coming from a defeated leader. So is Biden even fit to continue for the rest of the 3.5 years as the president of the United States? So if the situation is so, you can well imagine how things are in doldrums in US and how uncertain they themselves are of the future of the leftover Afghan Marines or whoever is left there and how to proceed about it. But Taliban is very clear on it. You have heard, we all have heard Suhail Shaheen talking about it, that if they are not going to stick to the deadline, it is going to be disastrous. So I see a lot of chaos going on 31st August onwards. And I have also seen a lot of flip-flops in the US policy. First, they said it could extend. UK also said it could extend beyond 31st of August. But when it came from Suhail Shaheen that it will not be tolerated and it will be considered as a violation of the truce between the two parties, then they got back to their earlier stance that we will be done by 31st August. So it's more of a speculative position because after the blast at the Kabul airport, things are quite fluid, and for the evacuation, even the US staff needs help. So let's hope they will get out by 31st of August.
Right, Zunaira, the result of hosting Afghans in the past had not been so good for Pakistan. Now, reportedly, the country is again preparing to accommodate a large influx of refugees. How different do you think would be Islamabad's strategy this time?
Well, there is ambiguity, I would say. If you talk to the officials in the government, most of them have no clue what's going on. But on the other hand, when they are on TV, when they are in front of the media, they say that they are not letting any Taliban refugees in, but the contact points are open to establish a contact between those who were already here in Pakistan before all this mess occurred, and they are just struggling to come back. So all the people who are there with the paperwork, with the proper papers in their hands, they will be allowed to come back, but not the refugees. My question is, and what I'm skeptical about, is that how efficient the system is on the border to see if people are entering with the fake IDs, because as you've seen, ISIS has struck back on Kabul. We also fear that India will strike back in any form. And as the Russian president said, that we don't want militants entering in our country under the cover of refugees. So I don't know what mechanism is in place to distinguish between who is coming to Pakistan as a refugee who was already living here and they left just to see their relatives over there, or for whatever purpose. So this is quite dicey, but I'm very clear on it that we cannot afford, in terms of economy, in terms of the terror wave that we have recently seen in our country, we cannot afford to have more Afghan refugees in our country.
Right, now the Taliban and the forces resisting in northern Afghanistan's Panjshir Valley are negotiating a ceasefire. What if they don't agree on a truce, and if there is any agreement, whether the Taliban will give them representation in the future government?
Well, first of all, I think there is going to be an agreement, and there is already a ceasefire. And whatever reports are coming is that they are constantly negotiating with each other, which is for the first time in history ever, because the Northern Alliance and Taliban were considered poles apart since always. So if they are talking, there is definitely a room for negotiation. There is a room to agreement. But even if they don't agree, I think Panjshir would fall in a matter of days because they don't have any supplies. It's a natural fortress. It is a difficult terrain. And in the first place, if someone has reached there already and they are actually surrounding it, it simply means they have already won it. So it is just a matter of days that Panjshir will fall. And as far as your question about their share in the government is concerned, I'm sure Taliban are now aware of the fact that they have to have all the sections and factions of the society incorporated in some way, no matter how little. They would have to incorporate them. They would have to give them a little share into anything and everything. And this is the only way forward to run and govern the Afghanistan. So I think there is going to be a power sharing agreement.
Right, Zunaira Azhar, thank you for speaking to Indus News. And now we're moving on. Pakistan has evacuated another batch of citizens and foreigners from Afghanistan. The evacuees landed in Islamabad on special flights. The country has evacuated over 8,400 people so far, including over 1,100 through Torkham border. Meanwhile, U.S. lawmaker Lindsey Graham has lauded the efforts of Pakistan for assisting in the evacuations. In a tweet, the Republican senator said Islamabad must be part of a sustainable solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. Graham termed the current situation in Kabul as dangerous and said the region is very complicated. Pakistan's Information Minister Fawad Chaudhry says it is encouraging that the Taliban are willing to form an inclusive Afghan government. In an interview, he underscored the importance of engaging authorities in Kabul. The minister said Islamabad has suggested to the Taliban that a broad-based Afghan government is the only way forward. He warned that Afghanistan can become headquarters for terrorist organizations, including ISIS, if abandoned. Fawad said Pakistan is hosting some 3.5 million Afghan refugees, adding that the country's economy cannot bear more. Meanwhile, Pakistan's ambassador to the U.S., Asad Majid Khan, said investment in the Afghan peace is the best way to counter terrorism. In an interview with the German news channel, he underlined the need of an inclusive government to ensure long-term stability in Afghanistan. A top Iranian security official has accused U.S. President Joe Biden of illegally threatening Tehran. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, said Biden's statement establishes Iran's right to reciprocate. Earlier, in a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, Biden said the U.S. may consider other options if nuclear diplomacy with Tehran fails. While talking on the Palestinian issue, he reiterated support for a two-state solution. He stressed on refraining from actions that could exacerbate tensions. Meanwhile, Bennett welcomed Biden's statement, saying it can bridge the gap between Israeli and U.S. approaches to Iran. He said that Tel Aviv has developed a comprehensive strategy against Iran's nuclear breakout. Israeli forces have injured dozens of Palestinians while dispersing their peaceful anti-settlement protests in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent says it treated 33 people who were wounded during the crackdown. It says 2 of them were injured by rubber-coated bullets, while 31 suffered suffocation after inhaling tear gas. The rally started from the main mosque of the village of Beit Dajan near Nablus. Meanwhile, Israeli troops also clamped down on another protest that erupted in the south of the city of Hebron. A local activist says occupying forces also arrested 7 journalists covering the events. According to estimates, there are about 650,000 settlers in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Khatami says his country won't be used for launching attacks on neighboring countries. At a summit in Baghdad, Iran has emphasized the need for achieving peace through a dialogue free from foreign interference. French President Emmanuel Macron said the Arab region continues to stand with Iraq in its fight against terrorism. He said the region needs to coordinate its efforts and work together to combat terrorism. Meanwhile, the Arab nations have renewed and reaffirmed their support for the stability and security of Iraq. China has strongly opposed and condemned the passage of a U.S. warship through the Taiwan Strait. The Defense Ministry statement comes after a U.S.-guided missile destroyer transited through the sensitive zone. It said Washington has frequently carried out such provocative actions which are very erroneous in nature. It added that these acts depict that U.S. is the biggest disruptor of peace and stability in the area. Earlier, a senior Pentagon official held talks with the Chinese military for the first time since President Joe Biden took office. U.S. officials said the discussion was focused on managing risk between the two countries. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden has accused China of withholding critical information on the origins of COVID-19. Biden's statement comes after the U.S. intelligence community said coronavirus was not developed as a bioweapon. More in this report.
Experts believe reaching the root cause of the pandemic, that is, the origin of the virus, is as important as developing remedies for it. But controversies and heated debates continue to dampen the efforts. President Joe Biden says China worked to prevent international investigators and members of the global public health community from accessing the origin. And U.S. intelligence community says it cannot resolve whether a Chinese laboratory incident was the source of COVID-19 without more information. Beijing has rejected the U.S. report as not scientifically credible, saying it wrongly claims China is hindering a global investigation. Meanwhile, Chinese health officials have advised vaccine booster doses for those who need to travel abroad where infections are surging.
In addition, people with weak immune defenses or those over 60, as they are at a higher risk of severe critical illness and death than other groups of people, are advised to have a third inoculation as a booster jab 6 months after completing their regular vaccination regimens.
Over in South America, Brazil logged 761 daily deaths and more than 27,000 new infections. In Mexico, though the daily cases are lower, the death tally remains high. The country reported over 19,000 new infections and 863 fatalities overnight. Meanwhile, Argentine prosecutors have charged President Alberto Fernandez with allegedly breaking a mandatory quarantine. They say he and his partner hosted a birthday party last year with friends.
The truth is that this was known because I made it public. I did not hide anything. They asked me for the list of people that entered to presidential residence during a year and a half, and I handed them the complete list. When they detected those 9 people and saw it coincided with Fabiola's birthday, they said it was a party. And the truth is that the party shouldn't have occurred, and I am sorry it happened. It wasn't made to harm anyone. It was a negligent and imprudent act.
In Asia, India reported nearly 47,000 infections, the highest in nearly 2 months, and 509 deaths overnight. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte has extended the restrictions in the capital region and some provinces until 7th of September. Australia reported a record 1,126 infections, the vast majority in New South Wales, the epicenter of the Delta-fueled outbreak. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.48 million lives and infected 215 million people so far.
Pakistan has reported 120 deaths from coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the toll has claimed to 25,535. It said almost 4,200 people tested positive for the virus overnight, raising the positivity rate to 6.83%. The ministry said the caseload has exceeded 1,148,000, while more than 1 million people have recovered. It said more than 93,000 cases are active, of which nearly 5,600 are critical. Meanwhile, Pakistan has received 3.7 million Pfizer vaccine doses from the US. In India, police in the northern Haryana state have baton-charged protesting farmers at Karnal's Gharonda toll plaza. Following the incident, a farmers' body issued a call to block all highways and toll plazas across the state. A farmer leader said that the protesters were brutally attacked, with over 100 others arrested despite a peaceful protest. In a tweet, opposition Congress leader Rahul Gandhi said the blood of farmers has been shed, bringing shame to India. It has been 9 months since farmers arrived at New Delhi's borders to protest against the 3 controversial laws. In Bangladesh, at least 21 people have died when a passenger-packed boat collided with sand-laden vessel in the Tigris River in the Brahmanbaria district. Authorities said the rescue operation for dozens missing is underway. Police noted that the dead include 9 women and 2 children. Officials said the boat was carrying over 100 passengers, adding that some of those swam ashore or were rescued. Earlier in May, at least 26 persons died in a boat accident in the Padma River. In Senegal, up to 48 people are missing after a boat capsized 22 miles from the estuary of Senegal River. The army said Navy vessels rescued 11 passengers and retrieved a body from the waters. In a statement, the army said those rescued included 8 Senegalese citizens and 3 Gambians. It said search and rescue efforts are continuing, but gave no further details on the passengers or their destination. But this year has seen a rise in the number of migrants making the dangerous crossing from Africa to Spain, Canary Islands. In Peru, tensions have erupted as the right wing dominated. Congress confirmed the new cabinet of President Pedro Castillo. The cabinet headed by Guido Bellido was approved by 73 votes to 50 votes against. Castillo administration was marred by allegations that some cabinet members are aligned with the Maoist rebel group. His move to appoint Bellido was also controversial. Peruvian media claimed Bellido was investigated for an alleged apology for terrorism over his statements. Since Castillo's victory in the presidential runoff, far-right groups have taken to the streets calling for his annulment. They claim thousands of his votes were fraudulent.
It is a disappointment, but we are grateful with the congressmen who have defended democracy and the country's freedom. This fight is not over. The fight continues. We are not going to accept this terrorist cabinet, and we are going to question minister by minister.
The murderer of former U.S. presidential candidate Robert Kennedy has been granted release by a California parole board. The state's governor, Gavin Newsom, ultimately will decide if Sirhan leaves the prison or not. The board's decision came after 2 of Kennedy's children appealed to release their father's killer. The local district attorney's office in Los Angeles has said that they will not move to oppose his release. Now 77, the Palestinian-born convict was requesting parole for the 16th time. The U.S. has urged Mexico to clear ad hoc camps housing thousands of migrants in border cities due to security risk. 2 of the biggest camps are located in the city of Reynosa across the border from Texas and opposite to California. In a statement, the government official said that Reynosa camp is home to at least 2,500 people and has drawn criminal gang members. Facing criticism over illegal crossings at the border, the U.S. administration has pressed Mexico to curb the flow of migrants. The gun that killed American Wild West outlaw Billy the Kid sold for over $6 million at auction. It had been expected to fetch between $2 million and $3 million. Sheriff Pat Garrett used this Colt single-action revolver to take down Billy the Kid in 1881. Bonham's auctioneer said the gun was bought over the phone by a person who wished to remain anonymous. Bonham's described the gun as the most iconic treasure of early Western history. They said the price, $6.03 million, is a world record for any firearm. 21 years old Billy the Kid was wanted man in Arizona and New Mexico, killing 8 men. The gun came from the collection of a Texas couple who amassed Western firearms and other artifacts for some 50 years. In Bolivia, massive fires have destroyed over 80,000 hectares of indigenous territories and protected areas in the country's southeastern region. They have reached the Nembe Guaso Conservation Area in the Santa Cruz department. Satellite data shows the wildfires have intensified over the past 2 weeks and are invading protected areas. They have killed dozens of animals and also injured many others that have been rescued and transferred to a shelter in the town of Rabor. Fires broke out on 1st August and quickly grew out of control due to high winds. During the last week, they have gobbled forest and other habitats as they grow. Tropical storm Nora has intensified into a hurricane and is gaining strength along Mexico's Pacific coast. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said that the storm can bring dangerous flash floods and mudslides through the weekend. It added that the heavy rainfall is expected following the landfall. The storm became a Category 1 hurricane with maximum winds of over 100 kilometers per hour in the Mexican Pacific. Mexico is still suffering from the ravages of Hurricane Grace, which left 11 people dead. Scientists claim they have discovered the world's northernmost island off the coast of Greenland. The tiny point of land was revealed by shifting back ice. The island measures roughly 30 meters across with a peak of about 3 meters. It consists of seeped mud as well as moraine, which is soil and rock left behind by moving glaciers. The scientists say the island's appearance is not a direct consequence of global warming. The discovery comes as a battle looms among Arctic nations for control of the North Pole. Several U.S. expeditions in the area have in recent decades searched for the world's northernmost island. In 2007, Arctic veteran Dennis Schmidt discovered a similar island close by. And now it's time to take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the U.S., officials in the Washington state have eradicated the first murder hornet nest of the year. Details in this report.
After a daunting procedure, workers in the protective gear were able to remove a hive of murder hornets near the town of Blaine along the Canadian border. The operation began with the removal of bark and decayed wood from the base of the alder tree. The workers vacuumed out 113 hornets from the nest before netting another 67 in the surroundings.
Here in Washington, 100% of them have been in dead or dying alder trees, actually. This particular one was right at the base of an extremely rotted alder tree. I believe 2 of the combs were right, I would say right at ground level, if you will. The rest of it, they had started to work up into the extremely soft wood of the rotting alder tree. And then, of course, last year's was 8 foot up inside of a pre-existing void in an alder tree. That tree actually had quite a bit more stability to it. It wasn't quite as far gone.
The species, also referred to as the murder hornets, are the world's largest hornets. They can grow up to 2 inches in length and prey on honeybees and other insects. They can conduct mass attacks on honeybee hives, destroying them in a matter of hours.
We essentially advise against people that are unfamiliar with the behavior of hymenopterans to get engaged into the eradication or the control of these very formidable hornets. I mean, the Asian giant hornet is the largest hornet in the world and can cause some very serious damage to a person who is not familiar with their behavior, or we really advise and strongly advise people to say, look, if you have reason to believe that there is a nest somewhere, contact the authorities.
The hornets are not native to North America, and the species were first detected in the United States in 2019 when a hornet was reported in Whatcom County.
In El Salvador, hundreds of people took to the streets of the capital to protest against plans of adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. The protesters said they feared the government would start paying their pensions in Bitcoins instead of dollars. They also raised concern that people do not understand the technology needed to use cryptocurrency. Salvador's Congress had approved President Nayib Bukele's proposal to embrace the cryptocurrency. This made it the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. The law means that the e-currency will be on an equal footing with the country's official currency, the dollar. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.